Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Lipstick Leadership Legacy Podcast. As usual, we are jumping right into the middle of our discussion on crucial conversations. But with crucial conversations for yourself, sometimes you just do not understand the question to ask yourself, right? You're too close to the process. You might, looking at someone else, you might see the difference between miserable and uncomfortable, like you were saying. You know the difference when you're looking at someone else, but when you're looking within, miserable to uncomfortable, that might feel like this, And I think too many people cannot articulate the two very close feelings, situations, things like that. But you do have to talk to yourself and say, what are you doing? Have you chosen to be here? Are you simply uncomfortable, or did you not choose to be here and now you're miserable because truly you feel out of control? And all of those related questions. What do you think about that? As far as the conversations we have with ourselves in difficult situations.
I like when, for example, in the book with Crucial Conversations, if I take a conversation I would have with a significant other or with a neighbor or with my boss and use that tone, any one of those, with myself, it's much more diplomatic, first of all. And I think that is a key difference because, like you say, when uncomfortable feels also very closely related to misery. The conversations, I'll just speak for myself, can be very condescending or condemning because I got myself into this situation and it's going to be up to me to get out of it. There's very little room for how I got here. It's almost instead a condemning question, like, how did I get here? And in Crucial Conversations, instead, it's a much more considerate.
Yeah, and it's exploratory too.
Much more exploratory. Okay, so if I'm, and part of what we were talking about earlier around accepting that an uncomfortable situation can really be a gift, God's grace, blessing, a gift, an opportunity to imagine what better or different would look like, what would comfortable look like, what brings me joy, what really lights my boat. And in reflection, though, not imagining about some future time, but really even in the day, what do I enjoy? When am I happy? And then focusing on why that is. And so if it's 2:00, which is when I tend to be really wanting to do something else and feeling like I don't have a choice, like my time is being made for me. And as an adult, how ridiculous that I'll put myself in this position, trading time for money and money for time. And it's really, no, not necessarily, because this is an investment in my life purpose. And not only that, but this is a really great opportunity to explore. First of all, where in my body am I feeling this? You know what? I probably just need to stand up. Why don't I at least try that?
Yeah. And most people get an afternoon slump, and it usually hits around 2:00. That lunch has finally hit your stomach, and it's dragging your emotions down, your energy down, and you're just feeling it. And you're right. Maybe you need a glass of water. Maybe you need to walk around. Maybe you need to stretch because you've been sitting there for hours after you ate lunch.
It's so true.
Yeah, there's a whole host of reasons.
And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right? When I take the opportunity to go ahead and stand up, it's almost funny. Like, oh yeah, I've been sitting down for a while. Yeah. And maybe I can stretch. And oh wow, I really do enjoy stretching. It feels so good.
Yeah.
And maybe having some water, which ironically, if I were doing something else, maybe no 3 of those things would be happening at 2 p.m., which is really a good thing to do in the afternoon for physical health, mental acuity, right? And so it's been nice to laugh at myself
Yeah.
while also acknowledging, hey, I think I just had a crucial conversation with me and it worked really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think while we can laugh at that, it really is a process to get there where you are asking yourself just enough questions to unpack what's going on. You and I work with clients, and we are so good at getting to that next question that just digs a little deeper. That next question that asks the client to look at the situation just a little bit differently, to pull out something else that might be going on, to discover their part of the interaction that they may not be contributing so well, and but when it's us, we're so close to ourselves that we don't know the question to ask always. And, I remember when I was teaching kids about having conversations, small talk. How do we make small talk? Go back to your who, what, where, when, why, or how. Hey, how did you find yourself here? Right? If you're at an event, or how did you get on the team? If you're making new friends, and you just joined a team together, but you've never met them. Who do you know here at this party? Right? If you're trying to make small talk at a party. So it's asking all of those questions again. And that's what I go back to for personal check-in. You know, who am I thinking about that's making me sad right now if I'm feeling some kind of way? Or how did that verse hit me that I'm reacting this way? What is the application for that? What just happened? What's
Mm.
my feeling right now? So, checking
Those are
into,
great questions. But you
yeah,
know what else? I'm really curious to find out then what happens, right?
yeah,
I mean, I love that
yeah,
because the question itself is interesting enough to take the time to articulate it silently.
yeah.
And then if we are really ready to listen, that's a whole nother piece that we offer to our clients with a lot of compassion.
Yeah,
And that's how we're able to ask better questions after we listen because we listened.
yeah, yeah.
And yet, when talking to our own self, asking a great question first is ideal,
Hmm.
especially if it's interesting enough to actually answer it, because,
Hmm.
there are impulses. If you're someone like me that might say, I'll answer that question and I'll ask, I'll entertain that thought while I go and have another cup of coffee, right?
Yeah,
Walking to the coffee machine instead of really taking the time to pause
yeah,
and listen,
yeah,
articulate the answer and listen to what I'm saying.
yeah. And
Um,
sit with it.
it's so compassionate.
Yeah,
It's amazing how someone as compassionate as I've known for being outside of myself can really grow and have had such a nice long journey learning how to find compassion with myself.
yeah.
And then like you said before, it does take time and it is very layered.
Hmm.
But then once, like, for example, let your choice be your voice. Let your choice be your voice. Once we learn how the decision-making process is applicable step by step,
Right.
and then we start practicing that application repeatedly,
Yeah,
there comes this day when all of a sudden some of these critical questions turn into a series of steps.
yeah,
And it's a really great healing. So instead, almost immediately, even though I remember almost every day at around 2 o'clock, I have to
yeah.
be here.
It's an
I'm
energy
also
drain.
able to smile relatively quickly because I know this is a feeling. This is not something outside of me. Um, my job or my workload or anything like that is not actually what's causing this problem for me in this case.
Yeah.
But actually, my body is uncomfortable in many,
Hmm. Yeah,
or I like to talk on the phone and I want to get some human interaction
yeah,
away from the computer. Well, that is valid.
Mm-hmm.
and also taps into some things that I've been committed to around discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
Yeah,
what do
I
you,
like that.
yeah, what do you
Discipline,
think?
yeah, discipline is one of those big things, discipline, um, personal responsibility. Like, okay, I love when you say it's not happening outside of me. It is an internal process because that takes personal responsibility. Nobody's doing anything to you. You're having a feeling from inside out, right?
Mm,
Having a feeling on the inside and it's manifesting itself where you can see it on the outside, right? You're slumping a little bit. You're a little bit tired. And but to investigate from the inside, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Sitting with the thought and then coming up with some solutions, like maybe I should drink that glass of water. I haven't, or maybe I should move my body just for a couple minutes and that'll make me feel better. Oxygenate the brain in a different way. It is responsible because it starts with what I can do for me.
yes.
You're not looking around looking for some relief from somebody else. Um, and I think too many people in that conversation with themselves, when you're not very aware, some people can fall into blame,
Oh,
blaming outside factors. Oh, it's this, it's that exhausting coworker I have. Well, that exhausting coworker hasn't talked to you for an hour. You've been sitting by yourself, or whatever it is. But we have external factors we would like to blame because they're convenient, they're easy, and really sometimes it's just us. It's where am I? And not acknowledging enough that our body needs certain things to promote the feeling of energetic, awake, alert, refreshed, and we have
or
cycles.
discipline.
Yeah, we have cycles in the day,
And we have,
where you need to get up, like that food is settling real low, and and I think that's a common slump. I remember I went through this physical mental cycle when my kids were in school, and they used to take naps in the afternoon when they were small enough. And I realized that I had really gotten used to the house getting really quiet during a certain time of the day. And when they started going to school, it disrupted a little bit of that time, and they didn't need that nap anymore. So it became a quiet time in our household so that I could get that rest because I was now in a routine where my body and mind needed quiet during a certain period of time before I got busy again with all the matters of the evening, whether it be, checking homework, making dinner, cleaning up after the day, all those things. And we are routine, creatures of routine and habit, and we need rest in order to accomplish those things, or some kind of refreshment.
recharge
Uh,
the battery.
yeah, yeah, and stretching and hydrating is one of those two biggies, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I've learned that.
absolutely. I appreciate that. And now more than ever, you know, post COVID, the pressure that we would already be taking on ourselves with a lot of accountability, and I should this, and if
Mhm.
only my coworker didn't that,
Yeah,
right, is now really exacerbated with the grief of loss from COVID.
yeah, yeah,
There were a lot of losses. Also, the um, economic insecurity, as well as political and social insecurity with everything that has happened in, gosh, in law enforcement and on the streets,
yeah, and anxiety too, with being
right?
back in with coworkers. There's been lots of conversation about people being very anxious getting back into tighter quarters with their coworkers again after a year and a half of not being in those same places. And thank God for businesses or job sites that understand, hey, if somebody needs to be home half the week, it's for their mental health. It's not that they don't want to do the things that make a good employee. It's that they are easing themselves into being, in a co-working situation versus 100% working from home, where you feel cocooned, safe, protected from what we have had a year and a half of messaging saying you're in danger, everything's out to get you, and disease, and you know, um, uh,
Absolutely. Are you
all of that.
vaccinated?
Yeah,
That
all of
question
that.
coming up. People want to shake your hand and then ask, are you vaccinated? Well,
Yeah,
how about if you just keep your hand to yourself
yeah,
and we don't
yeah,
have to answer those
yeah,
questions?
yeah.
Because I prefer not to shake your hand anyway now because of the way my whole anxiety is set up, right?
Exactly,
But here's
exactly.
another thing. It's like you mentioned mental health being at the forefront and having great bosses or companies who appreciate that. And yet, it's like the phrase mental health has suddenly become very in the forefront.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
would have wanted to happen long before.
Mhm.
However, the way it's coming out or what the way it's coming up by and large is almost making it cliche. We're
Yeah,
bombarded with ways to look out for our mental health, but almost as if it's a fear, like I should be sick or I should be worried or I should be something.
yeah,
And do I know what to do about it if I feel this way?
yeah,
They're really it's almost a tragedy, but that's what we're all about. That's what we're here for
yeah,
because
yeah,
um, mental health and self-care or discovery is such a practice. It's moment to moment. It always depends. And if you are working with practitioners, listening to podcasts to find out what are the layers, because
yeah,
it's not enough to know that you have to do something about it or what it is.
yeah,
Today, we have to know how.
yeah.
How do I apply this to my everyday life? And again, going back to crucial conversations, which I believe could be a 1 year study,
Yeah, yeah,
because there are so many ways to apply it now more than ever, because I'm serious, day to day, the conversations are crucial. In every 1 hour, you're going to be
yeah,
talking to someone who's on the verge of losing it
yeah.
and not knowing where to place that energy.
Right.
We are electric beings, we are full of electricity. And
Mhm,
I tell you, we do not try to find a plug. We don't try to plug in
mhm,
at the car, right?
mhm.
We look for a plug in the house on a wall somewhere, but we know that
Yeah.
from repetition, it's like so obvious. But
Mhm.
guess what? Knowing what energy is going on inside of us and what to plug into for a specific feeling,
Yeah.
that's not easily known.
Yeah.
So that makes it almost impossible to access.
Yeah. Yeah. And too many people do not take note of those things that charge you up and decrease your energy. All of us are aware of energy drains, but do we actually take um, conscious note to avoid them? Like, oh my gosh, there's that coworker who just talks to me for 20 minutes. I don't have time for that. It gets me anxious because I got to get back to work. Yet you don't take that extra step of how do I stop that? So I can say, hey, Deanna, I really love talking to you, but I have a whole host of things going on my desk right now. So let's, if I see you a little bit later, that would be great, but I got to get back to my thing right now. That's a crucial conversation that you may be avoiding, and when you avoid things, it tends to grow, right? Just like problems. If you try to avoid your problems, they tend to grow on you. If you avoid having a conversation with somebody who needs to be redirected, that person will keep coming at you because they absolutely have no idea they're an energy monster to you, right? Unless you stop them and say, hey, I really enjoy when we catch up when I'm on a break, but right now I'm not. And so I'm going to have to just get back to my thing and redirect that conversation. Even in that, I gave them direction. I love to talk to you when I'm on a break, right?
I think that's interesting that you're bringing that up because after a year and a half, first of all, that's excellent advice. Yes, for our peers.
Yeah.
And after this long break, or it was really quarantine, so it really
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a break.
Yeah.
But when folks were working from home and able to take calls that came in or able to watch what's going on Zoom and things in between
Mm-hmm.
meetings for work and emails and such,
Yeah.
uh, that has become much more of a problem in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
among peers,
Yeah.
where there is before there at least was some time structure where you
Right.
knew that you would be everyone would be coming in at a certain time almost, consistently, and then lunch is a certain time and da da da.
Right.
That's gone. So the consistency of what we are used to expecting adds to a little bit of the anxiety. And some of us who did pivot and transition during the pandemic and the
Mm-hmm.
quarantine are now talking to executives or attorneys or accountants more than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a whole nother set of issues when the conversation drones on.
Yeah.
Saying, I'd really love to talk to you, but not now. Let's wait till break.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't say it. You can.
Yeah.
And it is equally as effective, but it
Mm-hmm.
comes with this whole different feeling of
Mm-hmm.
like intimidation or something.
Yeah.
And I hear about it a lot. And I kind of get complimented about it, like, oh my gosh, you're right. We should have this conversation later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so on one hand, it goes, you're talking to the skill set of having some go-to phrases or go-to responses in your back pocket that you
Yeah.
can lean on. And yet, on the other hand, sometimes it comes down to wise counsel, where we can be free to vent
Mm-hmm.
and yet know that we're in a safe place enough that our colleague or our best friends can say, well, here's a tip,
Mm-hmm.
right? This
Yeah.
is what you need to do. Here's a way to engage in a crucial conversation, get your needs met without A, losing your emotional standard,
Mm-hmm.
or B, without getting fired. I mean, sometimes you can be very well maintained emotionally and still say something because you don't really know the personality or you haven't read the conversation well enough
Mm-hmm.
to respond appropriately.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
always a risk.
and it is a risk.
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
is
and that is always a risk, but I really believe in general, we're kind of a permission-based society. And by permission-based, I mean you and I, Deanna, are friends. If we were in a professional setting and I needed to vent to you about a mutual client, let's say, I would walk up to your office or I'd give you a call and say, Deanna, do you have about 10 minutes? Because I really, really need to tell you a little bit about our mutual client. And that's asking for permission. I've just asked you, do you have about 10 minutes? And I look at my watch and I think, okay, I said 10 minutes. I better make it 10 minutes. And if you said no, I would, again, employing emotional intelligence, I really want to say something. And yes, now would be my preferred time, but you just said no because you're respecting yourself
yeah.
and your time and your workload. And since you're the person I need to have permission to talk to some kind of way, I need to accept that now is not the right time for you, even though I want it to be the right time. So I can back up and double up and say, okay, when is a good time for us to talk about this client?
Yes. Yes. Let's have
And then
lunch.
we
Let's go
negotiate.
for lunch.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
So, I think most of us have permission-based conversations in our society now. You can only have that if you have other things in your tool belt as well. Again, understanding levels of emotional intelligence. Are you emotionally intelligent enough not to take that rejection? No, I don't have time right now, but I have time at 1 o'clock. Will that work better for you? Or, girl, let's just chat over lunch. I take lunch at 11:45. You going to be free then? And now we're answering each other, but keeping our boundaries really set. so that we can stay respectful of each other. And I think that's what most people can't get to, where if I feel a burden to unload on somebody, I got to take responsibility for that. I feel that, and I'm imposing my feeling on someone else. So I need to know that they're willing to be in this space with me now. And if they're not willing to be in that space now, I need to be okay with a time negotiation.
That's
I think too many people take that negotiation part personally,
mm,
and
good
that
point.
has no space if I really want to get my needs met while respecting the other person that I need to get my needs met by,
Mhm.
right? And this can translate to work, personal. Like, why is my time schedule of when I want to say something more important than the listener's time schedule?
Mm,
You know, I mean, that's the ultimate in disrespect. I'm going to say what I want to say any old kind of time and run you over even when you're not able to really listen to me.
yes.
You know, I mean, it smacks of unfair, right?
And yes, that's drama too.
Yeah.
And we gotta
And
ditch that drama.
yeah, and there's so much of that that we accidentally engage in when we don't understand those two important aspects of emotional intelligence, boundaries. There's a third aspect, boundaries, and how to have a crucial conversation. You can't have a crucial conversation if someone's not willing to hear you. That's not a conversation at all.
Mm,
You're just unloading on that person. And are you going to get the results that you want? Ultimately, am I going to get the results that I deeply desire, or am I just looking to unload on that person? You got to ask yourself, as the initiator of that conversation, am I doing the right thing for this party of two?
mm,
Right? Or is
yeah.
it just for my interest? Party of one, over here, just wanting to unload and say whatever I got to say. And that brings up a whole bunch of discontent, because a conversation is two or more people, right?
Well, it's interesting because I really tried to put myself in the drama person's shoes, like thinking, when have I needed someone's ear now and not later,
Mhm.
and then got kind of stinky faced because they were not available when I needed them.
Yeah.
And when I put myself in that position and start hearing you say setting boundaries as well as engaging in emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
um, I almost immediately felt comforted because I'm like, yeah, I do that too. Like,
Mhm.
but but make no mistake, given the right set of circumstances,
Yeah.
I will absolutely have to remember that I am an evolved being that can wait.
Right. And it's difficult. It's super difficult because, when you are riled up in your emotions, you want now is the preferred time frame, right? Now, later is not even a consideration. But think about it this way, and this is what my very patient, amazing husband has taught me. Just because I've been thinking about it for an hour doesn't mean that the time is now for him. I can't listen, if I'm going to have an argument with him in my mind for an hour and then all of a sudden clue him in openly, that's not enough time for someone to get prepared for that battle.
Okay.
So, and we rarely fight, but it becomes very uncomfortable if I've been fighting with him secretly in my mind. Or, let's translate it to a professional environment where you really need to tell somebody something very, very important to your workday, and you finally have gotten yourself together, braved up, and they're not ready to talk to you. And you just feel like a deflated balloon.
Mm, mm.
That's not their fault that they don't have time to talk to you right now, and that you had to work yourself into this state of braveness, um
Bravery.
bravery, in order to have this conversation. That's not their fault. That they're not ready. You just barely warned them that the missile got shot out, and you may want to say, hey, I want to set up some time to talk to you about this, because I don't know how your childhood was, but if someone said, I need to talk to you, I immediately think I'm in trouble, because that's what my mom would say. I need to talk to you. And then I'd get hauled off to the room and spanked. But, and
Is that right? Is that how
right,
your childhood was?
right,
Yes. Well,
and
that's nice that you got hauled off to the room, because I
right.
got one in public. But anyway.
But and I think we're all just grown children, right?
No,
And so
seriously.
we take those belief systems, those patterns, when someone says, hey, I want to talk to you, you think you're in trouble. Most of us think we're in trouble. I think it's a universal fear. Unless you're warned what the content of the conversation will be in the future, you are unprepared, and you're starting to think worst case scenario. I don't care how professional you are, you're thinking worst case scenario. And you're replaying the last bits of conversation you've had with this person, whereas an elevated level of conversation, in order to enter a crucial conversation, would be to warn the person, hey, I really wanted to take 10 minutes of your time at 1 o'clock to talk about this client, because I'm having this, and this issue. Will that be okay? Oh, now they know you don't have an issue with them. Right? And it doesn't turn into this defensive drama situation, because now you told them what the conversation is going to be about. And you have put a framework, or maybe boundaries, around what you're going to be talking about. So they're not showing up all defensive. You're going to react to the defensive nature of their presence. And it goes back and forth, and you don't even know how you started that mess, when you really could have started it by prepping that person over the content of that conversation. And I think if I've learned anything in 20 plus years of being married, it's warn me of the content, so that I can emotionally get myself ready for how I need to enter the conversation, so I can, check some emotional fears and anxieties, whatever mine may be, before I enter that conversation, so I'll have my mind in the right direction.
That's really interesting. I love that, actually, because it reminds me of when I would call subordinates, which I don't like thinking of people working under me. I manage projects, not people, really. However, as a sales leader,
Right.
if I call someone and say, I need to talk to you in 30 minutes, if you're available, and bring a notepad, a pen and paper, back in my day, okay.
Mhm.
But and then it's like, we're into the conversation, and I wasn't upset, but I think you and say aloud, I think I'm sensing a little something. What's going on with you? And it's like, well, you didn't say what you were going to talk to me about. I have heard that.
I'm
And
telling you, people are set up to be fearful first.
well, it always surprised me, because in sales, every 10 minutes, at least once an hour, there's a call that says, do you have 10 minutes in 10 minutes? And you're like, yes. And you bring a pen and paper. But, it's amazing, because then not necessarily knowing what was going on, just wanting to avoid that.
Yeah.
I started sending an email in advance.
Yeah.
I'd like, here's a quick agenda. And I ended up doing it across the board, simply because it just seemed easier.
Yeah.
And now when you're talking about it, I'm thinking that it's really considerate, actually, no matter which personality type you're working with,
Right.
to ask permission in a way you can still have authority. That's not the point. But to ask permission for someone's time.
Yeah.
And
And
give
I
folks
think,
a heads up.
yeah, and I think to manage up, if you're a manager, or if the other person is not skilled at this, it's to say, yeah, I do have 10 minutes. What are we going to be talking about, so I can be prepared?
Yes.
right?
Excellent.
Now, when my husband forgets that, it strikes fear in my very soul when he says, I want to talk to you, I say, okay, what are we going to talk about so I can be ready? And he'll
Mm,
say, oh, I wanted to talk about this thing I discovered, online, or this idea I had. Oh, okay, now I can relax. And, that's managing that conversation up, because you absolutely want to know what you're walking into. And let me tell you, I can also discern if they're going to tell me some really hard things that I might not be expecting, if they cannot tell me and will not tell me, or they're being elusive about what we're going to talk about. Well, I just really want to check in with you. Now I know something, they're going to say some hard things to me. And even that I can prepare, right? Okay, all right, whatever it is, they're going to need some, I'm going to need to, fortify myself because they're getting their bravery up to say something that's going to be hard for them. So I need to also lock down my emotions so I don't, spin out. But it is, I really feel when I work with leaders, with owners of businesses, I try to teach them this skill because, again, if they're anything like me, it strikes at my very soul when someone says, hey, can I just talk to you for a few minutes? Because I think someone's about to, knock me down a few pegs,
mm,
right? And I can't have that emotionally. That's something that is very hard for me to walk into. I'm not walking into a landmine willingly for nothing, you know? And most people don't want to do that. They'll go, but it's like, have you ever seen somebody walk into your office? They have a lot of fear. It's like a sheep to slaughter, right?
mm,
They're there, but they are showing every sign of not wanting to be there. They're all in their head. They are not wanting to fully participate because they don't know when the shoe is going to drop and you're going to, lay into them. And so they're not with you actually in that conversation. And that 10-minute conversation turns into an exploratory session of why are you behaving this way?
mm.
Right? Because we all read things very, very well, and we can read discomfort very easily because we experience discomfort. We know what that looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we can put all of those things down if we're willing to prep, what could possibly be a hard discussion, but, you know,
Mm.
letting people know.
I like that. There is one of my favorite psychiatrists
Mm,
is Dr. Alana Curry, and she has it's called Dear Man. It's an acronym
mm,
worksheet that really assists us as leaders or as humans who really care about other humans in a crisis or in chaos, and most
mm,
importantly, in a critical or crucial conversation where there's discord.
mm,
And it allows us to look at the situation from our own perspective first
mm,
to decide what really is the root problem here and how did I come up with this experience and what actions led up to this, right?
mhm.
And it helps us use I statements.
Yes.
So if I get to talk my own way through a situation that I need to have addressed with someone else
Mhm.
first, then I might be able to ward off some of the things that would put other people in the defensive
Right.
or that be hitting below the belt
Mm,
because really I'm actually projecting something or maybe pulling from another situation
yeah.
that would then muddy the whole ordeal. And then it also uh, initiates your own perception of the response.
Hmm.
Like, so you do get to do a little assuming, which is good for us. We like to, that's kind of natural, a natural human thing. Well, if I say this, if they say that.
Hmm.
Well, if you get to do that with compassion, though, then you get to find out what really do you care about the other person's feelings before you go in on you think you're just addressing a situation. You think that you're handling conflicts well by addressing it up front. However, wouldn't it be nice if you had some compassion going in some of us think we're doing that when we say, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to hurt your feelings.
Mhm.
But that you might as well say, brace yourself. I'm about to backslap.
Right,
You know?
right, right.
And
That's
and
true.
yet you really don't want to hurt their feelings. But that phrase is just like when you say, hearing, I need to talk to you. We need to talk.
Yeah. Or, I don't mean any disrespect, and then you go on to disrespect them.
Absolutely. Please don't take this the wrong way. Excuse me?
Yeah, yeah.
And yet I can, as much as I don't care to hear that,
Hmm.
I have thought it.
Yeah.
Like I have thought I really want to have this conversation, but I don't want that person to feel disrespected.
Mhm.
But I mean, I'm arguing with myself
Right.
about being justified in, wait a minute now, let's just start over.
Yeah.
What we want to do is have our needs met. And
Right.
in the best case scenario, we'd also like to build a strength in the relationship. We want to bond with others.
Right.
And that means that we got to get through this because we want to show up authentically in our
Right.
relationships.
Right.
Okay.
And I love that goal of building the relationship, because even by saying hard things, you build the relationship if that is your goal, right? Because you will stay conscious through the whole, and focus through the whole interaction, because your subconscious has agreed with you that you want to remain in good standing with this person you're communicating with. And in fact, the higher goal is to come out of this even stronger. And I think it is not too lofty a goal to say, because we've talked about hard things, because we work through the hard in order to have agreement and understanding, we are, adding to trust rather than taking away from trust, and building the relationship ultimately. I don't know anybody who's not willing to hear hard things if approached gently.
Yes.
I don't know too many people. Now, you come in with a battering ram, with a backslap, and wanting them to shape up and not wanting to hear anything. Of course, you're taking away layers of trust, right? If
Yes.
you had it to begin with. But if you are gently coming into a situation while telling the complete truth, it's a different approach. And everybody knows when you two are struggling to make sure that, one, you're authentic, two, you're truthful, and you have the ultimate goal of continuing to build that trust and relationship. We all know how hard it is to tell someone the unvarnished truth, right?
Yes.
And they almost rather have you be nervous while saying hard things than being really confident in your brash, approach.
It's so interesting. I love going through this. It makes me reflect on my early years in sales or in wait service, if you want to get into my teenage years, but both the same environments where yelling and screaming and cussing was really part of the management experience. I mean, everyone got yelled on. I've actually been snatched up before in fine dining, snatched by the arm and told what to do. And it's really amazing how in the mainstream in corporate America, especially in government service, okay, where the lines are very clearly drawn about what can happen and what cannot happen, we have these go-to resources called HR. But
Right.
what about, but what about all the fringe workers out here who might be making the same as someone who works in corporate America, but are not at all being privy to even a whiff of what we're talking about today, because it's not the culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in staffing as well.
Well, you know,
No
well,
offense, staffing. See, one of those, no offense, staffing, but y'all
yeah.
messy.
And really, it's you and I know this question really well. And how's that working for you? Right? If something is not working in your life, your approach, have you, and this is to a general question, not to you, Deanna, because I know you've been in the work,
Yeah,
But
but I'm like, go ahead and ask me,
yeah,
because put me back there in those days, because
yeah.
I was a manager in sales. So go ahead.
Yeah. And so the question truly is that working for you? And if it's not, are you looking for a different result? Because only different behavior creates different results. Because doing the same thing, expecting different results, is the very definition of insanity. And
Well, let's
so,
go through this. Can we go
yeah,
through this step
yeah,
by step with you as the coach,
yeah.
with what you're talking about now in real application, and me as a salesperson? Because yes, I have grown so much, because at some point I couldn't take it. I couldn't take myself anymore, right? But we're talking about a decade or more of experience that was not only allowed but praised. I won all the awards, right?
Mhm,
Okay, or our team did, and
mhm,
I really felt like, as long as I am giving credit to the team that helped get us here, that I could talk to them any old kind of way, because it was effective, and it is. So
mhm,
let's do it. The situation was basically confronting a subordinate,
mhm,
confronting someone whose work you manage
mhm,
and whose productivity you're responsible for,
mhm,
and letting them know that what they're doing, oh, you need to talk. Okay, listen, hey, you know what? I just got a phone call and I need to see you in the next 10 minutes, or I need to see you within the hour for about 10 minutes, and bring a pen and paper.
mhm.
And then you come in, or not you, Jane, because you're going to coach me,
Yeah.
but then my um, coworker comes in and is already on the defense, and I just jump right in and say, the productivity from last week, or the outcomes from last week, is not hitting the mark, and
Mhm,
your productivity is not in the system, so I can't even stand up for you
mhm,
when I'm being asked what's up with your numbers, because
mhm,
you did not put all of your activity into the system.
mhm,
So what are we going to do about that?
mhm.
In that tone, with that body language.
Yeah.
And then be like, you're having, well, first of all, I can't really talk to you right now, because I don't care for your tone, your body language. How
Right.
about the words? How about the words? I'm gonna need you to focus on the words.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and this is very real. So I love this, Deanna, because this happens every day in, the world of work. It doesn't matter if you're corporate America, government, it doesn't matter. This happens every day. People are checking up on you, especially if it's productivity based. So this is very real. Here's the skill that I would work on with you. Eye language. I noticed that your numbers haven't been entered for this week. Can we talk about that? Or I have noticed that there is a diminishing result for your productivity. Can you tell me from your perspective what's going on? Or I received a phone call from one of our clients and they're dissatisfied with how you're handling their account. Can we talk about that? What from your perspective is going on? And then listen, because you've set up the situation that you're trying to discover more information on, and you're asking them to give their response. Now, you haven't accused them of anything, you've just given them factual information. I noticed, I saw, I got a phone call. That's it. Tell me what's going on from your perspective, because they could say all kinds of things that still might be unacceptable. Oh, well, I've been so busy, I haven't recorded information. You're right, I haven't been producing as well. I was sick 2 days last week, if you recall. So they may have valid and not so valid reasons. And then you can say, okay, you know what? You're absolutely right. I completely forgot that you were out of the office 2 days last week. And now you have to bring in some compassion. Maybe they were out because they were sick. How are you feeling? Have you been, are you feeling okay from being out sick? Maybe they were on bereavement. Right now, so many people were experiencing loss. Maybe their mind is not all the way attached to work yet, right? And if they say, you know what, you're right, my productivity hasn't been, and I have been kind of stuck. Now you can add some advice. What do you think we can do together? We, us, our are more powerful than I, me, mine, or you and yours. Because you and yours is accusatory. I, me, mine is overly authoritative and slightly accusatory. We, us, our says we're still on the same team. I have some information that might be beneficial to you, and it's okay to ask for information from me, right?
Okay.
And so I would really watch my eye language and try to get to we, us, our as quickly as possible so that they recognize that you're trying to support them in their goal because they don't want to fail. But when you accuse them, they can only be defensive, right? That's
Yeah,
my only
especially if
recourse.
the culture of the company,
Yeah.
right? Because they say the ish rolls downhill, if you know
Yes,
what
it
ish
does.
is.
Yes.
Okay. And so if the company culture really does say that people in lower and junior level positions, um, there's some terrible things, and I'm just gonna say it right now, like they are lazy, or they always have an excuse, or they just terrible things. And I honestly never do believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the staff person says something like what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's very valid, and some of it might be a little fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the we, us, our phase of what maybe we can do to
Mm-hmm.
approach that as a team next week to
Yeah.
get those numbers up, or, whatever the activity or outcome that we need to see is, must increase or improve. And then if you're someone like I used to be, you show up and
Mm-hmm.
outwork them, outperform them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like neener, neener, neen. Anyone could do it.
Yeah.
Well, what about the manager who believes that is the way? That's what? It's motivation. What?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a mindset. That
But what
is
would be
a
the better approach?
super that is a super competitive mindset that is still pitting even, and this is what I used to laugh about, or not laugh about because it was tragic. I would always look at leaders, and if they're saying the right words, I just say, you know what? They must have just recently read a leadership book that said they need to say those words, because people know when you think you are all trained up to use the right words, to manipulate somebody, and that's truly what it is, because you're just using words to manipulate people. They know when those are heartfelt, right? And genuine. Being a genuine leader means you're going to do the hard work to actually want to help that person to and hold them accountable. So here's the rest of the conversation. You got to, we are going to take on we're going to double down on our efforts to make X number of phone calls, X number of touch points with our customers. Let's check in at the end of next week to see how we did. And I want to see, and now this is where you're keeping them accountable. I want to see your call log. I want to see your customer, entries of touches that you're doing. Can we check in on that? Now, you've set an expectation that keeps them accountable. If they did none of those things, you have other recourse, about writing them up, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the thing. If you don't check in with people, give them a way to correct unacceptable behavior in a reasonable conversation, and then reset those expectations with doable steps. The next time you haul them into your office, you can't go back to anything except I noticed, I got a phone call. Because you can't accuse them of not making phone calls, because you can't, they have no log or what have you, and you didn't set that expectation. So it's having a reasonable conversation first, having them give you their reasons, setting expectations or resetting expectations to measurable results. It's not emotional. I saw you walking around here with some kind of stank face, and no, That's not your right to do as a person, to accuse them of having a face when they're probably on a break from making 40 phone calls that hour. You don't know, so you can't accuse. And then really following up and earnestly saying, okay, last week we talked about this, doing a full recap, and here we are. Let me see your log. Let me see, let me check your database stuff, and make good on your promises. That's another layer of trust, because now they can trust you in the hard things too. Not only in the soft, fluffy, nice things, but also the hard things. You will hold them accountable. That's the hard part of management. You had the hard conversation. Now you have to actually hold them accountable to tangible things, results,
Yes.
right? And so I think people forget that it's a whole cycle of a conversation. You can't just blast somebody, give them no actionable steps, and expect them to show improvement if you didn't give them your standard that you're seeking for improvement.
The thing is, though, Jane, people do respond to that. They
I
will
know.
give you what you're asking for and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
However, the energy in the space will also change.
It becomes toxic.
So that's absolutely right.
Yeah. And they
And
start talking about you, and that's a freaking waste of time.
it's no fun at all. When I first, it's no fun. I mean, and
Yeah.
then the behavior, and then that only lends to the belief system that folks don't do what they're told. Oh, the expectation was set and they just decided to do anything, whatever, anyway. Or it reinforces that bad behavior is
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah. You are teaching people how to treat you.
Well, then as long as you come up with the numbers, I mean, I just needed better numbers and I needed your activity in the system. So since those two things are there, I guess I can continue behaving any way I want to in leadership. It must be effective.
Yeah. And
Not
that
that
is a
and
common.
that is, go ahead.
Yeah. And that is a very common belief among leaders. And the fact of the matter is, if you were reviewed by your boss, because there is, content, the numbers, and then there's context, the people. If you fail in any one of those, you're actually not a good leader, because your numbers will steady go up if your context with your team is really great. You will take it, if you look at all the athletic coaches, John Wooden is one of them I think about, who coaches the average person. And it's so funny to read his story, because every team, every season, he starts with, this is how you put on your socks.
Yes, this is good. Go on.
Yeah. And so you start with the basics. So everybody's on the level playing field with you. You set your expectations, because you don't want to ever talk about socks and blisters and whatever again. You don't ever want to talk about how we do, sales calls ever again, right? But every new season you might have to, because you have new team players, they have to get in the groove with your team. So you do have to revisit that. The onus is on you as the leader. If you have teams falling out on you, quitting the group, they're washing out as quickly as they come in, that's you as the leader. That is your scorecard. And I think too many corporations fail leaders, people they put in leadership positions, forget that they're not actual leaders, they're just managers. They fail people they put in leadership positions by not having that review be a full review of content and context, or goals versus relationship with their team. Because if they're not with you, they're working against you. If you're finding success with a negative input, think about if you had a positive input, how much more you'd get out of your team.
If I am only looking at it in terms of productivity and numbers, then I'm going to have the same result. It's going to be that thing you're talking about where it's a teachy, that's very 101-ish of, and also I am representing, or was at, right now in this conversation, I am representing those leaders who are in senior leadership, but really do believe in the staff, really do believe in the team, and think that you're doing things differently because you're not ever going to talk about people the way they be talking, the way the muckety mucks be talking about people, which are really in all actuality, you're one of the people that they talk about also.
Yeah.
Okay, it's funny now. It wasn't then because it was a culture, right? And so in the case where what you're doing is effective and it, the turnover is not as relevant, especially the larger your teams get, the less, one or two people per quarter, one or two people leaving in one quarter is not as recognized as two people per quarter,
Yeah.
right? Leaving.
Yeah. And
And
I would
can
say,
get away with it because
yeah,
you're like, well, just hire A-listers who don't need a lot of supervision. And, so then the numbers don't really reflect that you're a bad leader.
yeah,
And the winner's circles, if you will, so everyone who comes to any meeting that you would call are high performers. So they're going to love you because you're competitive like they are. That really is a thing.
yeah. I mean, sales in general attract alpha personalities. I'm going to get this. They're very competitive, very extroverted, etc. Um, and they're okay with that, but not everybody is in sales. Let's turn this a little bit when you're
That's
not in sales. When you're not in sales, this dynamic does not work. Because now every time you lose a person from your team, no matter how big it is, it's a brain drain. They are literally taking information that the whole company entrusted them with and they're leaving. And guess what? They're not wanting to transfer that information to anybody else. So now you're trying to make up for somebody who is leaving, who absolutely has every right not to have to train somebody. Because I'm on the way out. I'm not giving you anything except the bare minimum on my way out, right? But if you have engendered trust, a love for the team and the feeling of we, us, our, they will write you a manual on the way out. I'm actually working with a team like that, where a gal is planning to retire. She's planning to retire, move out of state from this team. And we have a small, tight team that I'm working with. And she said, you know what? I'm going to write down every single thing I did for my job on my way out, because that is the least I could do for my boss, for our founder, right? And I thought, how wonderful of you, but the owner created that, right? Because this gal could have just as easily, no matter how nice you are, everybody's got a limit, right? No matter how nice you are, you can decide at any time to walk away with all that information, and let that other person struggle, not leave them passwords. I mean, everything. You can make their life a living hell if you're key enough, right?
Yes.
So choose your battles.
Absolutely.
And I really think my frustration as a coach, honestly, was exactly the scenario you're talking about, where a leader honestly does not see themselves. Let me give you one last example of this. I was working and training a governmental agency. I won't tell you which one because it's local. And the leader of the group really thought he was doing okay. And one by one during the break, because he would speak like everything is okay, that his team is with him, one by one during each break, and we had 3 breaks, I would get different team members saying, I don't know what he's talking about because we hate him. So it is that lack of awareness, that is emotional intelligence. And I tried to walk up to him after, because I thought it was my duty as an outsider to say, I'm getting a little different feedback than the impression that you're giving me about your relationship with the team. And he said, I have no idea what you're talking about, walked away. And
there it is.
Yeah. And I thought, and there's that, right? And they gave me examples of his behavior when they say difficult things to him. He literally walks away. And you know how difficult it must be in public service, because that's what government workers are considered. You're in public service. You enjoy all of the benefits of public service, and you're working with someone who they cannot move. And you know, you're feeling very stuck. And so you're thinking your last hope is this third party trainer, not a consultant to them, but a trainer of subject matter. And we were talking about customer service. Whew, it was crazy. But, you know, we don't realize that customer service is not an external game. It's an internal game first, right? With your employees, with your teammates, your coworkers are your first customers. And if you can't have good customer relationships in that context, you're not providing good external customer service, because you haven't given them enough positive balance to give positivity or any kind of helpfulness to the external customer. You haven't filled them up enough. You can only pour from a, you know, kind of full jar, right? And if you're not filling up your team, especially if they're customer facing, external customer facing, you're really not going to get the results you're looking for. And this team was suffering from that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate how you were able to bring that back around, because that would have been the very key point, right? So that even when there is productivity and what is that, longevity, where people are staying in the roles and they're getting the work done, but yet at the same time they're miserable. They're talking behind the management's back. And, you know, it may not be all coolish or whatever, but there's just, it's a toxic work environment.
Yeah.
And when I was turned on to Gallup Strength Finders for the first time and realized my strengths, I was so turned on. And then because of the strengths, excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat.
Yeah.
There are also the bottom, what is that called? The basement.
Yeah.
So you have your strengths, but then you have these basement or like shadow attributes of your personality. And when that was exposed to me, it was every single challenge that I was experiencing out there.
Yeah.
And I said, this is it. This is how we're going to train going forward. This is how we're going to communicate. And even though the company itself was not as interested in the training that follows the training, I was on fire. I was hook, line, and sinker. Yeah. And everything began to change from that moment. Why? Because when you genuinely care about people, that does not prepare you to lead. You can really, really care. Yeah. And think that your version of leadership is very people-centered. You can become, if you're like me out there, you can be convinced that if you can keep up the pace of what is expected to you, of you, that it will buy you an opportunity to really bond with the team. But your version
smooths over your pokey parts. That does not happen.
It does not happen. This is where self-reflection and self-discovery, even on a very baseline level, can be taken a step further and a step further for insights that make the day better, that make, you know, coming to work a lot different. And for those of us who, we might be managing productivity, but we are engaging with personalities. Yeah. On a every day in, day out basis. And if you would like to enjoy that, if you're like me, and you thought you were, because why? At the end of the day in the week, you're also exhausted as a leader. Yeah. From leading in that way. And especially if you think that you are gonna maintain the, what is this? The fidelity of your work relationship. So you're not telling anyone at home about what's going on at work, or you refuse to be really forthcoming with your management team, people who are managing you, that there are any problems. There's no trouble here, nothing to see here. But you're bottling up this very real pressure cooker situation where you know something's going on, but you don't have the skill set to address it in an effective way. Yes, you can address it, but will it be effective? Wait, what is your measurement of effectiveness, though?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have just enjoyed this conversation today because we didn't just talk from a high level of how to gain some insight, which everyone, would benefit from. I certainly have in reading and YouTubing and sharing with friends, but we really picked apart some very real to life scenarios
Yeah.
in leadership
Yeah.
that deal with crucial conversations, personality types, and
We started with ourselves.
the ability to start with yourself.
Yeah.
That's right. And be authentic about the pokey parts, right? And I am just honored to still be in the region, number one, and to be able to have a conversation with you and others like us who have grown and are still contributing from a place of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are so many ways to make a buck these days. And the mainstream is just the one that seems to get all the attention.
Mm-hmm.
But today, with people making choices to enter different types of work environments or to go it on their own, we've been very blessed to be trusted by people in that scenario to build their teams and to decide in what ways diversity is important, or in what ways job descriptions and job description evaluations are important. So what a treasure. Great talk tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think the thing we're saying to everybody who's listening to us is if you are a leader and maybe you feel like, oh my goodness, I might have some blind spots, contact Deanna or myself and have a session with us. You never know what you're going to discover until you get someone who doesn't know you so well that we are masking in the conversation. A skilled coach can uncover so many things that are helpful. And so that's really what we're asking you to do. If any of our conversation has felt a little pokey to you and you're thinking, ooh, that might be me. And or, oh, I'm not getting the results I really want to get with my team and I'm missing something. Give us a call. Our contact information is attached to this podcast and we are easy to find. So feel free to utilize us as your resources. And you never know, if we can be a gateway to your next level of success, we'd love to be there for you. So I too enjoyed today's conversation. This is JaneTaff the Sage.
And Deanna Vestal, your career catalyst.
And we'll talk to you next time. Hey everyone, we're back. You just listened to a very good conversation on crucial conversations, both on the personal level and the professional level. We are coming back to make a special announcement because we've been working on crucial conversations. We as business partners have been having some crucial conversations of our own. And in talking about our business, where we're going, how we want to serve you, we decided to go on summer break so that we can plan our next year of content for you. And we really want to take that time to do it slowly so that we come out with our next best level of service, content, and information for you. What else do we want to say, Deanna?
Please keep in touch with us. We will still be available to you and as easily as ever before through our platforms. You can still find us on Meetup, YouTube, Anchor FM, and any other places that where podcasts are found at the Lipstick Leadership Legacy Podcast and our L3P community on Meetup.
Awesome. And we will see you back here the very first week of September. So keep listening to all of our past episodes. Get caught up to the vibe that we've given you so far. And we will see you the first week of September. We look forward to sharing our new content with you. We'll see you next time.